Oh, I try to be on here as much as I can, dude, but I'll be honest with you, like, I don't know how to say this, but it seems like, I go back to the drawing board a lot. I guess that's what I need to say here, right? I don't know how else to say it except for I come out, I have fun for a little while, and then I have to go hide again. And then, I kind of rework, retool, and come back just a whole nother person. You know what I'm saying? So I've just noticed that the last couple of years has been nothing but growth because I used to be on social media all the time, and then I went to nothing, and then I'd come back and then be like, nope, that doesn't feel right. And then come back and then, no, that doesn't feel right. And then, I have to say, like, I just started paying more attention to myself when I realized that I had let go of myself so much. You know what I'm saying? Like you don't like taking yourself for granted is something that we can understand in a way or another, because when people take us for granted, we feel a certain type of way about that. But when you start doing the work, and you get the clarity and the insight, you realize how much of yourself got put away in one way or another, or just accepted for it just was what was normal and superficial. And when you go into your self-worth, your way of manifesting and the details of manifestation, and knowing that it's a vibration, your energy is your currency and your frequency, you start doing this kind of work. Not that you're just consistently looking for shadow work or something like that. It's like, no, hold on. Let me get to the frequency. Let me get down to the energy of the matter of why my life seems to continue a certain way cyclically. In other words, in a pattern or round and round. Why do you end up feeling this same feeling once more, is what Spirit just said. Why do they come up? And nobody studies the frequency or the energy to understand that this is something that's ailing them, that's diminishing their light, that doesn't allow them to flow or feel or know or have that intuitive self or understanding that comes through when you allow yourself to kind of like push everything out of the way, And I know we were going somewhere with this, but I just kind of broke in the channel about, and it comes and goes. This happens sometimes. I don't usually have to explain it. It just comes in. Oh, gratification. There we go. Like we don't understand that so much of us in detail and in depth, we have so much to be thankful and to be grateful for. Like we don't realize that is part of our frequency, that is part of our energy, that's part of us digging deep and diving into ourselves and understanding that frequentially we are the problem somehow. But we allow the divine light to show us these things, right? And how that happens, and it even happens naturally, and they're showing me the cycles of the moon that also allow you to understand how divine you really are. Because if you feel these things, if you could see that you're experiencing these things and you know these things to be true, then obviously somebody is divinely handing them to you. And it's a way of showing more compassion for yourself and understanding that you just need to slow down on the way that you process things, because we're in air energy, if I'm not mistaken, right now. So it's going to be mental, and that's coming. A lot of us are going to try to overthink and overprocess things when things are being simplified for us by breaking these cycles and these patterns, by understanding the natural cycles, patterns, and rhythms of the planet, and the cosmos. Our astrology plays a big point in our roles here, what we're here to do, what we're meant to be, what we're meant to get over, and all those beautiful things that you discover when you start looking at your folded map in hand, right? And this is kind of like another way of saying, if you're lost, remember that you have a map to be here that helps you understand yourself, that puts you in a better position to take control, right? but not from a controlling space where the inadequacies are triggering you and they have to be perfect because you're emotionally unstable. We're not talking about that type of control. We're talking about self-awareness and how you maintain your self-awareness and your awareness of everything around you without necessarily allowing yourself to succumb to an emotion unless you truly intend to do so. You know, the beauty of understanding how we give permission to perceive energy and how open we are is dependent on what we focus on. And I believe it's very important to know. Many others before you have come this far only to do this far. And you're not meant to go this far. You're actually meant to go farther. Strive for more. Unimaginable boundaries are everywhere, but we have to understand the minuscule boundaries that we place upon ourselves and don't allow ourselves to grow. We don't allow ourselves to enjoy the fruit of the actual labor that we have done and we are doing right now. You know? And we're not saying nitpick yourself till the bitter end. What we are saying is to not pick yourself apart in a way that's not conducive to your growth. Because when you do that, you suffer, and there's pain there, and there's discontent. And as you dig deeper, you only become the discontent. So you're immersing yourself in something where you do not belong, and the uncomfort is what's causing you to mind yourself to set yourself free. And we don't understand that this happens in a blink of an eye on how much we make a choice in our lives, dude, and how we go from left to right, or how we can make or create a left or right. That is that creative freedom and the expression that is within oneself that we do not understand how to control, how to maintain, how to understand energetic alignment and boundaries. You know, what true boundaries are versus what the boundaries we've been shown. You know, ask the divine is what I heard, you know? And if you're curious for more, these are things that we have the ability to understand, and they're welcome and they're open to these things, and they require guidance and understanding of ourselves. We're the ones who have to actually calm down and submit to a certain extent of what we're feeling inside and let it show us what we need to see. But we want to grasp things, we want to say no things, we want to fight things, we want to resist things, we want to put things aside, not realizing that that comes with a cost. A cost of emergence is what Spirit is saying, because it continuously rises. It's that cyclical pattern that we don't realize. And it takes me back to what I used to say is like, have you ever noticed how the people, places, and things change, but the feelings always stay the same? That's your memory of that. It's not theirs. And I hear forgive yourself for those things that you're holding on to that don't matter right now. You know, because you're more important than anything that you could possibly be feeling right now for another or for yourself. You know, there was this theme to today about grievances, you know, and how we're surrendering or submitting to our grievances, right? You know, either we're allowing them to happen continuously, or we're taking a stand and we're rising up against what is compelling us to feel a certain type of way that makes us want to feel comfortable and safe. When in actuality you're unsafe because of the instability that is there, that you're maintaining somehow with a sense of comfort. It's like strategy is what they said. It's they said you're conning yourself in that aspect where you're fooling yourself, strategically fooling yourself into comfort from a survival instinct that only puts you in a past space consistently. So I don't know who needed to hear that, but that's really beautiful that they can put it in a way for you to understand what's self-control and what that actually means to maintain that or have it in the first place is what I'm being told. So whoever you are, thank you for being here and listening to that message, because I believe it was for you and many others like you. you know? And it has a tendency of making you feel a certain type of way when things are shown or you discover things, and that's perfectly okay and perfectly fine that you feel that way. But you can't validate your fear by feeling through it. You have to understand that it's a beautiful blessing when we receive this type of intelligent information. It is divine intelligence that we are receiving. It's not punishment. You know, therefore you understand your grievances are understandings. They're lessons. Some of them, they're lessons. Lessons to overcome. Lessons to show you your strength that has already been there before. You just buried it under something or somewhere, is what I'm hearing. You know, and I believe that, you know, us as individuals, some of us, especially if we're in our masculine or you know, or a wounded feminine space, some of us don't realize that a lot of this shit that's coming up inside of us from an old way of being, and it's being torn away from us in one way or another. God's like, yo, let it go. Give it to me. You know what I'm saying? And some of us are like, no, but I don't understand. And, oh, but how about this? And what about this? And it's like, no, this is a time for surrender. This is the winter solstice. This is your release. This is your rebirth. And some of us are pointing in the wrong direction, not realize. They think that we're getting tugged on when in actuality we're being given a gift. The universe says basically, give it to me. Ground yourself and release. And allow yourself to know more of whatever it is that ails you, or completely, you know, eradicate that shit. You know, some of us get tired of fucking having to deal with the same shit over and over and over again. And we don't realize that that is an emotional boundary that we created for ourselves that we ignore. You know, and that's really important for us to understand how a triggered emotion becomes a trauma. You know what I'm saying? And the trauma is like, it exists continuously until you realize that, wait a minute, hold on a second. There is no trauma because I am no longer there. That trauma is from a past space that I carry with me, like some badge or something. And I'm being asked to let it go. What do I need to do for that? How do I release that? Where do I surrender? How do I surrender? You know, and I hear breathe more, you know. So we always tell people to breathe all the time because it's probably one of the easiest forms of meditation that you can actually focus and practice. Doesn't matter where you are. You can actually pay attention to the breathing, and you can focus on where you feel whatever it is that's kind of pulling on you in one way or another. If you're curious about yourself, you know, you can, I don't recommend doing this in public, but you know, always a sacred space where you allow yourself to grow. You know what I'm saying? Rebalance yourself. Become more aware of yourself. You know, a meditative space is something that we practice consistently in one way or another. And we might not even realize it. It might be our day job that we just go in there like a fucking drone and just knock shit out. And where did the day go? You know what I'm saying? It could show up as anything for anyone. And not knowing that they can achieve an inner enlightenment in a meditative state, even in a busy practice, you know. But that's masterful is what Spirit is saying here. But you can achieve that goal as long as you set those goals out for you, things that are pure, things that you deserve to do, is what the divine just said. You know, we're not promising you anything. We can assure you is there. You know, you discover it for yourself, and your experience is your experience to have. You know, should you choose to rise. What's, you know, if you chose to rose is what they're saying, you know. So it's, all these beautiful messages are directed out there for someone or something. And I'm really appreciative to be the messenger of these things, because I believe we all need to hear the encouragement and the motivation to rise above whatever it is that ails us, because we know that what is ailing us is causing us to live our lives in a certain way consistently over and over again. You know, the illusion, you know, which I'm not going to talk about, just trips you up and keeps you going and going and going until you, the one who stops spinning the wheel. You know, and that's something that we all have to learn in one way or another, that we're perpetuating cycles in our lives that incorporate a lot of teaching, a lot of learning, a lot of love and lessons dependent on how we are looking at the situation, right? we open up that space inside of ourselves, when we're in our inner space, when we're in our inner world, you learn so much more. You know, it's like a promise from the divine. It's like, I can assure you that it happens when you're there. You know, there is no guarantee against anything because it's already there. You just have to welcome it. You know, we have to say yes to certain things, realizing that we have said no to so many things for so long, and that's part of that inner enlightenment that we all receive, right? There's telling me the inner world, outer world, right? The inner world is how we actually live. We live from within, right? And what we create within ourselves is something that we actually live without. In other words, that we create our overall experience based on the frequencies that we hold inside of ourselves. This is the inner alignment space. This is the inner world and the inner space that we should be focusing on in one way or another. For those of you who have meditative practices, or you're looking to learn how to meditate, we can teach you those things. You know, you can reach out to us on the website, and we'd be more than happy to help you understand your energy system and your energy body, and how to energy align, and how to work from the inner world to maintain and manufacture a more desirable way of life and understanding and seeing things, so that way you're not overwhelmed by everything going on around you. Okay, some of us are so sensitive that we take it for granted and we just fucking shrug it off every day, not realizing that, hey, God handed you a gift for a reason and you're ignoring it. And that's kind of ungrateful, but, you know, also at the same time, you don't know any better, but maybe you should. I think that's the easiest way we could say that, right? You know, and this isn't a call out session, you know, this is just people talking. We're just, spirit is talking, you know, and, you know, some of us, I know who we're speaking of is actually very emotionally involved with this moment right now in one way or another, like I am, you know, because it comes from a deeply compassionate space, understanding what the request of the planet is. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not sure how many men have actually been able to embrace the spirit of Gaia. I'm not sure, okay? I have no numbers and I do not ask. But I can tell you that the love of the mother is nothing less than profound ever since I became aware of it. And that's what she wants you to love, to learn, and to grow, and to achieve, to connect, to reconnect with yourselves through the mother, and let her show you the way. I gotta tell you, family, this is nothing but a beautiful experience to be able to be a messenger for the mother itself, you know, and I have to tell you that it is a connection like no other, and it's a love like no other, but it also comes with a profound understanding and a teaching and a responsibility. Because a lot of us, like my wife has said, are suffering from an identity crisis, a spiritual identity crisis. And one of the easiest ways to erase those memories is to allow the ones that you remember to flow. The ones that the mother teaches us, like the natural people of this world. See, it goes way deeper, fam. Like, if you do the history, bro, there were beings here before anyone that were connected to this planet. They had a symbiotic relationship. There was no language. It was just understood. And those lineages are literally crawling through our bloodlines right now, awakening the natural, the native, the indigenous, the creative, the trade, all the natural instincts that came to us from this symbiotic relationship, our Mother Gaia teacher, showing us the way to live in harmony and balance and in unity, not only but within ourselves now, to reconnect with the Great Mother and understand that she's ready for it. She's teaching us, she's helping us learn, she's helping us grow, but we just have to connect to know. That's why grounding exercises have been coming up so furiously for me lately, and breath work, with my wife, because it's like, hey, we're trying to open the door for you, to show you a better way, because we were shown that way too. You know, and opening up to you, that is exactly what we're here to do and what we want to do. It's why we it's funny, because Spirit just brought me up a memory, and I was like, you know what, bro? If you're ever gonna find a fucking friend, all right, a friend will build you, a friend will grow you, a friend will motivate you, a friend will tell you how, like it fucking is. All right. So if you really have a friend in your life, are you that friend? Are you humble enough to tell yourself the truth? Are you humble enough to accept the knowledge, the wisdom, and the reception of this message right now? Are you responsible enough to stand up, put your chest up, and get rid of the uncomfort by just standing up to yourself, for yourself, by yourself right now in this moment, to receive this energy? You know, the energy of the mother, the great mother that literally lies beneath our feet and is everywhere, manufactured in one way or another. You know, are you ready to receive that? Because it's a grounding like no other. But it makes you self-aware of your woes, your misunderstandings, flaws, all those things that don't matter. But you're made aware of them because you realize it's about releasing them, which is pertinent to the very message that we have become right now. Spirit and us, because we're sharing this moment, and that moment, and they're that other. Not a lot of people understand how easy it can be to communicate with the planet by just coming into acceptance of themselves in that moment, by giving them that minute or the time that it takes, the time necessarily takes to know yourself and be patient and honor yourself in that space, because what you're going to be shown and what you're going to be given is of the utmost receival, because you can feel it here in your soul, in yourself. And that, you know, for even the skeptics, you can do this. You know, Gaia's calling to you. This isn't a story, this isn't a show. We're not making this up. Right now, it's time to anchor in to the very thing that you come from, and forget this identity crisis that we all suffer from somehow. And it's coming straight from the source of that. You know, we're being given a golden opportunity to receive more in our lives because we deserve more. Doesn't matter what you're going through, or even if you think that things are okay. You know, we make it better that way. You know, the reception of divinity and sovereignty to accept oneself is, people just receive more in the moment, and they have the ability to maintain their own presence and manifest more and create their desires and their dreams like God intended it was in the first place. This isn't some bullshit dream, fam. This is your life. This is your dream. This is what you want to do with it. Your deepest desires, what you long for, what you're truly meant to be, and what your path is. You know, there's no pretending anymore. The authentic you has to come forth. You know, there's no hiding. You know, what are you hiding from? Feelings? Thoughts? Emotions? You're running from yourself. You know, again, I don't know who needed to hear that, but here we are. You can't make this up, fam. There's no running from it. There's no denying it. It's just going to show up in your face. 444. You know? You don't realize that the universe is calling to you. It's like, oh yeah, these numbers say this, and they want you to pay attention to more, though. Don't just settle there. You know? Oh, I'm in divine alignment because I saw 666. No, there's a message there. Something's speaking to you. What are you speaking back? How are you reflecting that divine grace that has been passed upon you? Are you reciprocating that energy with the love and acceptance that it gave it to you? Or are you just Like, okay, whatever, you know, I'm in divine alignment, or you assume, you know, that that's exactly what it is, that I'm so blessed. Yes, you are. Yes, you are. But you're meant to learn more. You're not just meant to sit on cloud nine without the work that needs to be done to maintain the self there. You know, like a lot of us don't understand that it's a devotion like no other, and it's what you're willing to devote. And that's something that Spirit and I have gone back and forth with, I don't know how many times, and it's all about devotion and how much you're willing to devote of yourself to the divine, because it's the very thing that you are. You know what I'm saying? And that's, again, we go back to the spiritual identity crisis that a lot of people are having. And it's like, yeah, it's because you forgot where you come from and you forgot what you're connected to. You know? And it's not embarrassing, and we're not stupid, okay? That's just a construct that is meant to fucking defeat you in one way or another by labeling yourself. Hello? You know, these are concepts. We're not meant to swim in these things consistently. They're there for a reason, and they're not, you know, just like a lot of things in our lives that we have overcome or understood or learned how to forgive or been grateful for in one way or another. You know, all those things that we've already surrendered in the past, we don't realize has created a karma for us and a dharma that we can actually come into acceptance of, because we actually did the shit. You know, that you're not, you might feel like, or you might be dragging ass in some way or another, spiritually, mentally, physically, or emotional, but that can all be reversed if you start with divine alignment. What that means, how to better understand self-control and what that actually is, what it entails, and what it entrains along the way. Because when you start adapting to a more spiritual energy, your life completely starts to change to match the inner you that you've created for yourself by curiosity or knowing more, or a divine willingness to surrender to something that it loves you, but it probably scares the shit out of you because you don't want to release control, or you don't want to surrender, or it makes you feel uncomfortable in one way. You know you're not going to get possessed. This is total bullshit. We teach these energetic alignments to people for a reason. To help you balance, to help you realize, to become more clear on what you're being shown. Because in everything is a message, and a message in everything. And that's how you really get to know the divine is speaking to you, not just 444. It's the teachings are endless, fam. You know, but you get to experience life in a completely in a way that it's in a divine way. You know, it might not look in this moment like top of the world, fucking top shelf, I got a 50-bedroom apartment bullshit. You know what I'm saying? None of that shit matters. It's about how wholesome you are within yourself that creates those things as you see them fit to be, or what's meant to thee, is what I heard. You know, what you're meant for is building. That's all you're doing right now, is building what you're meant for. Each and every one of us is doing that. You know, we just have to be willing to surrender, or willing to know more, or willing to grow, willing to push past our fears and our self-control. And understand that the spiritual identity crisis is a very severe, it's a very severe act on people. You know, some of us have been tormented for thousands of years and are completely unaware that this is still happening in the background, thinking that we have to persevere in some way or somehow, that this is just going to be the way it is. You know, it's a form of acceptance, and I understand it. But I hear release more, you know, and some of us actually have to do, you know, soul retrievals and soul journeys and shamanic journeys to discover pieces of ourselves that haven't been shown. You know, we don't even realize that's a soul journey. You're going back to pick up a piece of yourself because you need to. It's self-responsibility. If you've been here before, if you're an ancient soul, then there's imprints there. You know what I'm saying? You might be suffering from something that you are unaware of. And it just keeps on happening in your life. And that's what the purpose of these services that we carry here, and my wife does, at womboftheancientsun.org, are for. Male or female, it doesn't matter, pick one. You know, because the masculine can be in their feminine, and the feminine can be in their masculine, and there's a lot of masculine in their feminine. And, you know, it even bothers me to say it, dude, because I got out of the fucking trap. You know what I'm saying? I got out of the trap of the wounds, you know, to see, to at least have the clarity to ask God, what is a divine masculine? Please show me. You know? What is that? Because obviously nobody knows that here. Okay? Because every example that I see is nothing but a mistake, an imprint, a generational conditioning, some type of foolishness, on the surface bullshit. No. I want to know what is to be a man of God. Because God is what made me. God is why I'm here. I would rather be that. Thank you. You know? And I encourage more people to do that. Because it's very eye-opening, some of the things that you receive, as long as you're in receptance of those things. It's also one of the reasons why we teach these things to people, to show you that you are divine, sacred, and holy too, in your unique expression of you. You know? And I know that there's a lot of fear, there's a lot of pain, there's a lot of people out there that don't want to get over shit, a lot of people that are fucking hiding, a lot of people that are just coping with themselves in one way or another, and that's all due to that spiritual identity crisis, and Gaia says that you don't have to, no more. It's an open invitation to know more. And then you can come back and we can guide you if you choose, you know? That's what these services are for, you know? We knew that sooner or later, the people were going to need a place where they could see the elders, the spirit guides, the soul retrievals, the journeys that they need to do, doing the soul work. Those who chose to do the soul work because they realized they were meant for more. And here we are. And we provide all these services for you on our website, you know? But it's beautiful to work with spirit hand in hand. Fold over fold is what they say, to be able to encourage the real work that has to be done in certain aspects of ourselves, to better understand ourselves as a spirit body, you know, or spirit being, whichever way you want to say that, and to embody that. You know, my wife was all over embodiment. You know, if you guys haven't caught her last live, go for it. You know, it's fascinating. You know, it's very enlightening as well. You know, we're not trying to convince you of anything here. You know, it's not about feeling the feels. It's about understanding that those feels are teaching you something that you need to know, and that's why it feels the way it does. You know, and if it triggers your ego, just understand that it was meant to trigger your ego, only to show you exactly what the fuck we were just talking about, and nothing more. It's not purposeful, but it's full of purpose. We just have to see the beauty of divinity and how it works in our favor. And we teach that. So for those of you who are curious about our services and stuff, you could reach out to us on fourcornershealing37.com or womboftheancientsun.org. Come check us out. Look at our services. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. If you're looking for energetic alignment, soul counsel, soul journey, doing the work, shamanic mentorship, we have all those things available to each and every one of you. We do it in the most compassionate way, and we understand that everybody's journey is a unique way. You know, so much love to each and every one of you. Y'all have a beautiful and blessed night, and I look forward to seeing you.